Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about just my observations in taking public transport. Now, I don't take public transport that often, so I try and do as many meetings online and things like that as I can, or driving. So it's not often that I take public transport. So it's a bit of a shock to it's a bit of a to the system when for over an hour on the train and going through fuck knows how many train stations and train stops, that white people are less than 10% of the commuters, of the travellers on the train. that in the carriage you just don't hear English being spoken, even though the people who, the brown and black people, whatever, who are on the train, even though they can speak, they're born in Australia, or they've been here long enough that they speak with an Australian accent, and yet they only talk the language of their genetic diaspora amongst themselves. They travel in groups. You hardly ever see a mixed race, people, whether they be friends or whatever, even the school kids very rarely associate outside of their genetic groups. So 10% max. My estimation is a maximum of 10% at any one given time in the few journeys I did over the last few days, and often I was the only white person in the carriage, or there was me and one other white person. That was it. So now when we're in Sydney, Australia. Now, years ago when I started doing international business travel, it was the reverse. It was very rare to see someone who wasn't white on the carriage. I mean, you would see it, but it just was very rare. And I never minded, never even thought about it. When I travelled, of course, the reverse was the case nearly all the time. I was the only white person in the room, or in the restaurant, or in the office, and even staying at Western hotels, or that maybe would be the only time that I'd see other white people, and particularly when you got out of the downtown sort of business touristy hotel type sector, again, I'd be the only white person in the hotel. So I got used to that, and I was in their country, so I didn't think that was odd. If you're in a country where the population's black, then I'd be, yes, it was sort of a bit of novelty to see another white person. So and I never really thought about it. That was kind of the way it was. And it's a bit odd in the United States. I mean, I got one of I think it was the first time I went to the United States, I got the young trainee girl in the travel department booked me into a cheap hotel. It turned out it was in the middle of a 100% black suburb in the US, and I was the only white guy in that hotel. Everyone looking at me very, very suspiciously and very furtively. And what you doing here, white boy? And so, but anyway, coming back to this journey, I just wanted to talk about this because, remember, this is Sydney, Australia, and how quickly this has changed. This is all within my lifetime, of course, particularly within the last 25 years. So it's gone from where you'd hardly ever see a non-white person to now white people are not only just in the minority and like that, but like seriously in the minority. Again, as I say, at times I was the only white guy on the train carriage, and you think that can't be possible, but it is, and it was, and it happened. The other thing, apart from not hearing English being spoken, and by the way, listening to, you could overhear, especially in a packed train carriage, it was certainly packed. You could overhear people listening to things on their mobile phones, and the Chinese people were listening to Chinese music and Chinese speaking stuff, or they were talking Chinese. The Indians were talking the Indians, and so on. The Filipinos were talking Filipino, and the list just went on. So you just didn't hear English around at all. So, and then going as the train was going along, of course, it's passing numerous billboards along the train line. Now, it used to be that there was only white people on the billboards, white models and white people fronting the adverts and so on. I don't recall seeing a single white person on the fucking billboards. And again, it's a decent journey, like an hour. So there's hardly any white people on the train. There's all the billboards have got now non-white models and so on. There was a few multicultural, but where there are 4 non-white people and 1 white person, and the white person's in background and so on, including things like education, where you'd be forgiven for thinking there wasn't a single white person in the fucking country. And why did this can't be? I mean, this is a concerted, organised, centrally controlled and directed. You will do this. This is how we were going to change these countries. There's nothing fucking organic about it, not even slightly. And these people aren't being encouraged to assimilate or integrate in any way. They're being, if anything, encouraged to whilst the straight white Christian males in the government castigate white people for being Nazis or white supremacists or something like that, those sorts of slurs. They're openly and brazenly encouraging brown and black people to, hey, stay within your culture, appreciate your culture. It's the evil white culture we're going to deal with. All those fascist Nazis we're going to deal. And because there's hardly any, and you see it on the trains, there's hardly any interplay between the races. I mean, you could not get it more compartmentalized. The Indians here, the Chinese there, the Filipinos here. It's just like that. And there's no, and also the Hong Kong Chinese off separately again, and so on. And you just don't see the integration at any level. And if it is, I'd be surprised if it was even 1%. Racial integration or assimilation. So these people are being encouraged. Meanwhile, because there isn't that integration, it's white people that are being accused of being Nazis and so on and so forth for it not happening. Whereas, I've got a lot of experience with this traveling around the world many times over. If you want to see real racism, white people are by far and away the least racist of certainly all the races that I've come across. And even there's huge racism in places like the various districts of, say, India, where there are different tribes, if you like, and might be 100 miles apart, but they're deeply racist, and there's a great deal of animus from one group to another, one religion to another, one region to another, and so on and so forth. And very ancient animosities that have been there for many, many hundreds of years, still, still simmering away. So, but I just wanted to mention this because I sort of hadn't realised it quite got this far. And again, like, I'm in Sydney, Australia, and I'm the only white guy in the fucking train carriage in Australia's biggest city. Whereas, 30 years ago, if there was a brown, a black person in the carriage, they would be the only ones. That's how quickly it's changed. None of it was wanted. None of it was asked for. None of it was needed. None of it was voted for. It's all been centrally controlled and directed all across the Western world by the globalist cabal. And they're pushing now for even more of it. So goodness me, I mean, what is happening to our world? You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.